Hi guys, today I want to talk about a realization I had after one of my kids was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ASD Level 1. And before I go into that, I just want to say if you're listening to this while you're doing something else like dishes, folding laundry, driving, whatever it is, that's not only okay, but I actually recommend it. We actually can think and process and listen more clearly when our bodies are occupied. Plus, I'm referencing notes and there's nothing crazy visual that's going to go on here. It's really more about listening. So, just want to say that. So, if you're doing something else, great. And if you're not, highly recommend. That's how I consume a lot of my content, especially audio, podcasts, and things like that. Back to the point. When I realized that one of my kids had ASD, Autism Level 1, it obviously changed how I understood him, right? Like, gave me context and more patience for how I deal with him and work with him. But unexpectedly, it really changed how I understood myself. I'm going to talk through how I've been making sense of that just to see if anyone else relates. I'm not trying to explain anything, fix anything, or offer advice really. I'm just sharing my experience of learning about my own neurodivergence through my kids. After my child's diagnosis, I started reading and absorbing everything I could. Research, books, podcasts, Google, ChatGPT, like everything I could, talk to anybody that I could about autism. And that's when I stumbled upon the word neurodiversity. I never really heard it before, and now I really can't get enough of it. I see it everywhere. It's kind of like when you have a car and then you see that same car everywhere. And I just want to clarify, when I say neurodiversity here, I'm not talking specifically only about autism, even though that's what brought me here, or OCD or ADHD. I'm talking just about an umbrella term speaking to people with nervous systems that process the world more intensely than others. A really good example is like a bright light. A really bright light might bug you, bug anybody, right? But if you have a specific neurodiversity around processing light, it's going to make it really impossible for you to focus. You're going to get really agitated and you're not really going to be able to be okay until you deal with that light, or you learn how to be more flexible around things that make you uncomfortable. Anyway, the more I learned about this world of neurodiversity everywhere, I really started to understand my child more and understand myself more and more. And it was like very healing and cathartic. Things that I just dismissed my whole life, like the sensitivity to light that I mentioned. But I also have a really intense sensitivity to smell. I could smell things really intensely, and if something is not smelling right to me, I cannot focus. And I was told I was being difficult, I was being a diva, I was being too much, but no, it was a sensory processing thing. I have restless feelings in my body, specifically my ankles. I had a really hard time falling asleep even when I was little sometimes, so my mom had to massage my ankles while I was sleeping. My child deals with that. And so when I looked that up, I realized, oh my gosh, that's a symptom of neurodiversity, sensory processing. Then I always have a lot of constant anxiety around social dynamics. I love people, I'm very extroverted, but the interactions bring me joy and energy, but stress me out so much because I'm so afraid of offending someone or doing something wrong, because that feeling of rejection or a feeling of somebody being mad at me is so, so incredibly uncomfortable. And it isn't uncomfortable for everyone, right? But if you are neurodiverse, those feelings of discomfort are overwhelming and you cannot function, you can't think. You really can't move past it until something there is resolved. I always just thought I was over dramatic, I was too sensitive, and I just was always trying to hide it. And I did that through people pleasing, anticipating needs, keeping track of so many details of people so I can make sure I don't step on any toes, adapting how I behave, and things like that. And that kind of behavior is actually called masking in the world of neurodivergence and neurodiversity. And often from the outside, if you're good at masking, you might seem very competent, very thoughtful, and I am those things. A lot of neurodivergent people are those things, but inside the experience is very anxiety inducing, and you're always like bracing and like waiting and thinking, for me anyway, how long am I going to be able to keep this up? How long am I going to be able to keep up this act that I'm a cool person to these people that seem to like me? You know, this is very, very stressful, and I still struggle with it, but a lot easier now because I have language and context around why I feel this way and why I struggle with certain things. But before I had this language, before I was introduced to this world through my child's diagnosis, I really just did not understand. So now that I have that language and I have that context, I see the pattern everywhere. And I've met several other adults and parents that are neurodivergent, and we're finally realizing we weren't failing, we weren't broken, there's nothing wrong with us, we were just adapting the entire time. We're adapting to society's expectations, to our environments, all that reward more output, more efficiency, more outcomes, and really ignored our nervous systems. And when we couldn't do it, when we were too overwhelmed, without the context of our neurodiversity, a lot of us, at least I did, really interpreted that as failure, like a moral failure on our part. Like, what is wrong with us? As I wrote this and thought about how to share, I really wanted to offer this reframe to anyone who might be earlier in this journey than me, and starting to wonder if they have some sort of neurodiversity. It's just this. It's not a conclusion. I'm not a doctor. It's a lens to try on. Like, what if you tried on the idea that you are not broken, you are not too much? What if you are neurodivergent and you've been adapting in a world that wasn't built for your nervous system? Holding that and learning this and processing that will not solve your problems overnight, but it gives me context and self compassion and a different way to relate to myself, a different way to understand why it is I struggle with these things. And through that compassion comes opening and growth, and you could learn more and see what kind of situations and environments you need to feel regulated and show up as your best self. And then give yourself grace and compassion when you can't, when you feel overwhelmed, when that light is too bright and you just cannot function, right? It's not because something's wrong with you. It's just that you have a specific need. And I'm just sharing this not as someone who has all the answers or who doesn't still struggle with this constantly, but as someone that is neurodivergent, and I realized it late in life through my child's diagnosis, and it's been so eye-opening and healing. And I'm really passionate about sharing that journey with others who might also be just figuring this out. So if any of this resonates, not in a huge dramatic way, but maybe in like a quiet, familiar way where you're like, wait, that kind of does feel like things I've struggled with, and I always thought I was being a drama queen or something. It doesn't mean, hey, you need to drop everything and you need to go figure this out, or you need to decide something, you need a label, you need a diagnosis, or some big next step. It's not about that. It's just processing that this resonates. Resonance is information in itself. And it's often just the first signal, and it's going to start opening your eyes to different things and patterns in your life if you're open to it. Noticing is the first step to change. So you don't need to relabel your past. You don't need to decide what this means for your future. You don't need to really do anything at all. Just notice. Just start noticing patterns, what it is that dysregulates you, and just know you're not too much, you're not broken, and there just might be this whole language and context of neurodiversity that'll really help you understand all the feelings and overwhelm you've been carrying your whole life. And understanding that matters now. It's not something to wait for someday to figure out.